My phone rang that afternoon as I was concluding my last consultation with a client at the downtown Chicago law firm. An unknown number appeared on the screen, yet it belonged to a bank. I scowled and replied, "Hello, this is Horizon First Bank's Brad Coleman. I need to confirm a few details regarding a mortgage loan for a home located at 720 Glenwood Drive." I blinked. Glenwood Road? I had no real estate there. With courtesy, I said, "You must have the wrong person. I don't have any loans tied to that address." "I understand your surprise," the man said, his voice lowering slightly with hesitation. "But your name, Emma Carter, is listed as a cosigner on a mortgage application under the primary applicant, Madison Carter, your sister." I froze. The pen slipped from my hand and hit the desk. "That's impossible. I've never signed anything related to my sister's loan." "I understand, but the loan was approved 7 months ago. All documents carry your signature. Your parents brought the paperwork to the branch themselves." I held my breath. A rush of images flashed through my mind. My mother's avoiding gaze during Christmas dinner, the awkward silence every time I mentioned Madison's new house, and especially when they handed me a few health insurance forms at Dad's birthday party, saying I just needed to sign because it was time for renewal. I tried to steady my voice. "I need a copy of all the documents immediately." "I'll email them in the next few minutes," Brad replied. "But there's another issue. The payments are more than 2 months overdue. The current balance is around $17,800. My chest tightened. I couldn't even register the rest of what Brad was saying. Once the call ended, I dialed Alex, my best friend since college, also a civil attorney and the only person I knew who wouldn't judge me for saying something this insane. "They forged my signature," I blurted when he picked up. "Madison, my parents, all of them." Alex didn't ask a single question. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. When Alex arrived, I had already received Brad's email. We opened the PDF file, and in an instant, every suspicion turned into pure anger. The signature line on the mortgage declaration didn't just resemble mine. It had the same little loop at the end of the A in Emma, just like my mother's handwriting. Alex tapped the screen. They didn't even bother to make it a perfect match. "This is a serious offense." I nodded. My hands were shaking when my phone lit up. My mom was calling. I handed the phone to Alex, who gestured, "Answer it. Try to stay calm." I took a deep breath and accepted the call. "Hi, Mom. Sweetheart, are you free tonight? Your dad's making your favorite spaghetti and meatballs." I almost laughed at the irony. "Perfect, because I wanted to talk to you too about a very interesting call I got from Horizon Bank." There was silence on the other end. Then she spoke, her voice stammering. "I was going to tell you soon. Really, it's just. Madison needed help. And you're doing so well. So your solution was to forge my signature? Do you realize this could cost me my job, my law license?" "You're overreacting, Emma. We're family. Families help each other." I clenched my jaw, fighting to stay composed. "Help each other? Or just help Madison? You put me in nearly $18,000 of debt and didn't say a word. Madison will pay it back. She just needs time." I cut her off, staring at the computer screen showing 3 overdue payments. "I'm coming over tonight. Madison better be there too. We need to talk clearly." I ended the call, still shaking. Alex closed the laptop. "Do you want to press charges?" I sank into my chair, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I need the truth. All of it." Alex placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then we start tonight." I nodded, something shifting inside me. Not pain, but resolve. My family wanted to use my success as a shield for their bad decisions. Fine. Now they'll learn what it's like to face a lawyer. Alex returned to my office at 8 p.m., carrying his laptop, a bag of sandwiches, and a look more serious than I'd ever seen. "You need to eat something before you lose it," he said, setting the food down and pulling up a chair. "I've started digging into the bank and 3 other financial companies. This is not just a mortgage. I stared at his screen as files began to pop up. My name, my personal email, my social security number. Emma, he said quietly. There are 3 credit cards in your name, opened in less than 6 months. The combined credit limit is almost $70,000. And they're all maxed out. I collapsed into the chair, my heart pounding. No way. I've only ever applied for one card, my Amex from 2019. And that's just the surface, Alex said, flipping to another screen. There's also an unsecured personal loan for $50,000 from a finance company in Iowa, dispersed 4 months ago. And worse, an investment account in your name was used as collateral for a business loan. I jumped up. What? I don't own a business. You don't need to, Alex said calmly. They just needed paperwork and a signature, which they've gotten very good at faking. I paced across the office, my mind racing. 7 months. For 7 months, I had lived, worked, and believed my financial life was secure. And in that time, the people closest to me had used my identity as a shield for their debt. Your credit score has tanked, Alex added. When was the last time you checked? About 6 months ago, I answered. It was 812. It's 613 now. I slumped back in the chair, completely drained. My career, Alex. If the firm finds out, they'll start asking questions. If there's an investigation, I could be implicated just for being the account holder. That's why we need to act fast, he said seriously. I've already contacted Nora, a financial fraud expert at our main office. She's agreed to help but needs every single document. How much more do you think? I don't know. I asked, my throat tight. Hard to say, Alex shook his head. If they forged a signature for a mortgage, there's nothing stopping them from using your identity for investments, more credit, even tax filings. My phone rang. It was Madison. I didn't answer. We'll take it step by step, Alex said, pulling out a folder. First, you need to contact the 3 credit bureaus to freeze your report. Then we'll file fraud reports with every institution that opened accounts in your name without consent. I nodded, still dizzy. What's the total estimated damages so far? About $292,000. More if we find other hidden accounts. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. Nearly $300,000. Not because I made bad choices or overspent, but because my own family decided I could handle it. I need to know what else they're hiding, I whispered. If I'm the target, who knows what else they've done? Alex nodded. I'll coordinate with Nora. I think you should also bring in an independent legal analyst to review all transactions on your accounts. A thought struck me. Wait, Mom borrowed my laptop twice last month, said she needed to check email. And Madison, she came to my office on my birthday and stayed late. She could have seen account info. Alex opened his laptop, accessed my remote login history. A few seconds later, he turned the screen toward me. There's an unauthorized login from your mom's home IP right after Madison's visit. So that's it, I said, voice hollow. They didn't just take advantage of me. They planned it. Alex paused. What do you want to do next? I looked at him. The answer was clear. No turning back. Tomorrow night, I'll confront them. But not as family. I'm going to let them know I know everything. And this time, I'm not going alone. I stepped into the suburban house my parents had lived in for over 20 years, feeling like a stranger. Everything looked just as it did on Thanksgiving. The worn carpet, the family portrait in the living room, and the familiar scent of roast chicken Mom always made when she was hiding something. Madison sat at the dining table, eyes puffy. My dad stood near the stove, back turned, saying nothing. My mom looked up from the couch with a forced smile. Emma, you're here, she said, like nothing had happened. I didn't respond. I placed a thick stack of documents on the table, printed from Alex's files. Let's not pretend. These are copies of every credit account, loan, and investment fraudulently opened in my name. Mom glanced quickly at the file, then looked away. Madison broke down in tears. You don't understand, she stammered. I didn't mean to. I just needed a little help with the down payment for the house, and then things got out of control. Didn't mean to? I cut her off, my voice cold. Madison, you used my credit score to take out a $180,000 loan. You went shopping with credit cards in my name, and you used my investment account as collateral for your own loan. You call that a little help? That's when my dad finally spoke. His voice low and tired. She just needed a start. And you already have everything, Emma. A career, money, a reputation. Madison just needed a chance. I stared at him. So you both thought forging my signature and using my identity as a financial tool was reasonable? My mom stood up and stepped closer. We're family, Emma. I know this was wrong, but I believed you would understand. I believed you'd forgive us. I stepped back half a pace. Forgiveness is not on my to-do list today. Madison grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. I'll pay it back, I promise. I just need time. I pulled out my phone and opened a photo of her credit card statement. Last month, you spent nearly $9,000 on spa treatments and $3,500 on designer handbags. How exactly do you plan to pay that back? How much do you earn per month? Silence. The question sliced through the living room like a blade. I don't know, Madison admitted, her voice so soft I had to tilt my head to hear. I don't have a steady job. I nodded. Then I'm sorry, but you can't pay it back. And if you both truly believe that love is enough reason to destroy my credit, career, and reputation, then maybe we're not even speaking the same language anymore. My mom burst into tears. Emma, please don't do this. Your sister, she'll lose her house. I looked at Madison, now trembling like a child caught red-handed. Then I looked back at my parents, the same people who once taught me that honesty was a core value. Now standing there, hoping I'd just look the other way. I've contacted a lawyer, I said slowly. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing an identity fraud complaint with the State Financial Crimes Unit. My dad scowled. You're really going to take your own family to court? I'm not taking anyone anywhere, I replied. You brought this on yourselves when you chose to exploit me without asking. Madison whispered, you can't do this. I'm your sister. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You are my sister, but you're also the person who wrecked the career I spent a decade building. You don't get to steal everything from someone and then ask them to smile and forgive you. My mom collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. My dad stayed silent. Madison could only stare at me, panic in her eyes. I walked toward the door and turned back one last time. I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing it for justice. Because if I stay quiet now, there will be a next time and another after that, until there's nothing left for me to protect. I closed the door behind me, leaving behind the tears, the betrayal, and the endlessly repeated excuse, we're family. Because for the first time in my life, I realized family is not a license to hurt someone and call it love. 3 days after confronting my family, I was sitting in the office of Solstice James, a senior financial advisor at the law firm I was working with. Alex had made the introduction, and within 5 minutes of meeting her, I knew why. Solstice didn't say much. She simply studied each data line, typing with precision as if decoding a cursed treasure map. I sat beside her, cold sweat soaking the back of my shirt as I watched the screen fill with numbers and account names I had never seen before. Emma, she finally said, almost 2 hours into tracing the transactions, we have a much bigger problem than you think. I looked up. How big? Big enough to call the FBI. I held my breath. Solstice turned the screen toward me. I've been tracking a series of suspicious transactions from your investment account, used as collateral for a so-called private investment fund named Riverpine Growth Fund. Ring any bells? I shook my head. Exactly. It doesn't exist, but several members of the Winmere Golf Club, where your parents are regulars, have invested in it. She pulled up a spreadsheet. I traced the flow of funds. A total of $5,200,000 passed through at least 4 intermediary accounts, 2 in the US, 1 in Vice, and 1 anonymous account in Luxembourg. Oh my God, I pushed my chair back, struggling to breathe. It doesn't stop there, Solstice continued. They used your financial records and reputation, including a copy of your real investment portfolio, to convince others to contribute. Your name, your photo, your investment account, even fake email exchanges showing you as the fund manager. What? They faked my email. They created one nearly identical, e.carter.conalt@gmail.com. They also replicated your e-signature. I suspect there's a keylogger installed on your office computer or a shared device. I dropped my head into my hands, my heart racing. So they didn't just scam me, they used me to scam others? Exactly. These people believed they were investing in a fund run by a successful young attorney. They trusted your personal profile, your perfect credit score, your job title. It was a sophisticated setup. Just then, Alex walked in with a coffee and a look of barely concealed tension. I got a message from a bank employee. Emma's father and a friend just tried to withdraw $200,000 from a joint account, but the system flagged it and froze the transaction. Good, Solstice nodded. We need to stop them before the money disappears completely. I still couldn't catch my breath. What about the victims? Has anyone come forward yet? Not yet, Solstice said. They're all older, well-respected, and reluctant to admit they were fooled. Some are old friends of your parents. Others were your mom's college classmates. I was stunned. The people who trusted my family most were the ones being hurt the worst. There's someone you need to meet, Solstice said, stepping out briefly. She returned moments later with a woman whose neatly styled gray hair and beige coat I recognized instantly. Mrs. Helen Ward, my former high school teacher and my mother's longtime friend. Hello, Emma, she said softly. She said I could trust you. I stood and shook her hand. I'm so sorry. If I had known sooner. She shook her head, eyes misty. I believed in your mother, in your image, young, successful, financially savvy. They said you ran the fund. I withdrew my entire retirement savings. My throat tightened. I'll do everything I can to recover that money, I promised. I swear. Alex nodded. We've prepared a full case file. We'll submit it to the Federal Investigation Office in the morning, Solstice added. We're also compiling a complete list of victims. Once the case is launched, they'll receive protection and legal support. I looked at the whiteboard on the wall, covered in sticky notes with victim names, dollar amounts, and transaction dates. It looked like the blueprint of a massive fraud scheme, with my name right in the middle. How much time do we have? I asked. Not much, Alex replied. They're panicking. Wait too long, and the money could vanish into other banking systems beyond our reach. I clenched my fists. Then we start now. That morning, I walked into the Hallage Bank headquarters with Alex and Solstice, carrying a thick file filled with forged emails, financial statements, IP access logs, and a verified list of fraudulent investments. Frank Delaney, the branch manager, stood up when he saw us, a flicker of surprise and tension crossing his face. Emma, I just met with your parents earlier today, he said, trying to maintain a neutral tone. They claim you're trying to tarnish the family's reputation and even threaten to sue you for defamation. I placed the file on his desk and looked him straight in the eye. Then I suggest you take a look at what I brought with me today. Frank sat down, opening the documents, reading each page slowly. The calm in his eyes gradually gave way to concern, especially as he reviewed Solstice's analysis of the suspicious transactions, specifically the money trail from the Riverpine Growth Fund to anonymous offshore accounts. Oh my God, he exhaled as he reached the IP address report. All mortgage applications, investment activity, and credit card openings were executed from the same location, your parents' home. Solstice nodded. We also extracted device identification logs. All actions originated from a personal laptop that matches the one Madison brought with her to Emma's office. Frank closed the folder, his face now stiff as stone. I'll have to escalate this to our internal legal team immediately. The bank will need to freeze all related accounts pending investigation. We've already sent the same report to the Northridge County Police Department and the Federal Financial Crimes Office, Alex added. Officers should arrive shortly. Less than an hour later, 2 plainclothes officers entered the bank. I recognized them from an earlier meeting, Inspector Hope and Deputy Inspector Morales. Miss Carter, thank you for cooperating. We've reviewed the evidence. It's time to bring in the parties involved. I waited in the back conference room as Frank called my parents and Madison, asking them to return to the bank to clarify some information regarding the mortgage paperwork. All 3 agreed immediately, probably still thinking they were ahead of the game. When they entered the room, my mother was the first to speak, her voice casual, like walking into a cocktail party. Frank, I'm so glad you called. We thought it best to clear things up with Emma as soon as possible. My father gave me a curt nod. Madison wouldn't meet my eyes. Clear things up. Exactly, I said, pushing the file across the table. Please review this. It contains evidence of identity theft, fraud, financial manipulation, and violations of federal law. A frozen silence fell over the room. Madison trembled, eyes wide. My mother snatched the file and flipped through it frantically. My father's face turned red, his hand tightening into a fist. Emma, he growled. What do you think you're doing? I'm stopping the 3 of you from continuing to ruin my life and the lives of at least 14 other people, I replied. You called it helping family. I call it what it is, organized crime. My mother slammed her hand on the table. You're going to put your entire family in jail over a few mistakes? Madison is your sister. No, I said, locking eyes with her. I'm bringing criminals to justice, no matter what last name they have. At that moment, the 2 officers stepped forward, flashing their badges. Gordon Carter, Helen Carter, Madison Carter, you are being placed under arrest under a summons from the Federal Financial Court for charges of fraud, financial crimes, identity theft, and operating an unlicensed investment scheme. My mother's jaw dropped. This is a mistake. We're the victims. She made this up. Madison broke down in tears. I didn't know anything about those offshore accounts. I just helped Mom and Dad convince a few friends to invest. My father tried to stand, but Morales stepped in. Sir, we advise you remain silent. Anything you say now may be used as evidence in court. As they were led out of the room, my mother looked back at me, eyes filled with fury. You'll regret this, Emma. Families don't do this to each other. I said nothing. I simply watched until the 3 of them disappeared behind the glass door. My heart no longer felt heavy. Alex stepped beside me. You okay? Not quite, but I'm on the right path. I opened my phone to find messages from several victims, people I once called family friends, thanking me for standing up for the truth. Federal Courtroom 4 in Chicago was packed on the day my family's trial officially began. I sat in the front row, among legal representatives and witnesses, clutching my statement folder, my heart pounding like it no longer belonged to me. Across the room, my father, Gordon Carter, sat in an old gray suit, looking more worn than I had ever seen. My mother, Helen Carter, sat quietly beside him, occasionally glancing at me with pleading eyes. And Madison, my sister, looked like a faded shadow, pale and hollow-eyed, lips dry, gaze fixed downward. Judge Roberts opened the trial with a commanding tone. The defense attorneys leaned on familiar tropes, unintentional family pressure, financial hardship. But when Prosecutor Whitaker stood up, their narrative began to unravel. And I knew I wasn't alone. Less than 2 days after the sentencing, I received an email from the board of directors. They invited me to lead a new initiative called Reclaim and Rise, a legal and emotional support program for victims of financial fraud committed by family members. We believe no one is more qualified than you, the CEO wrote. Not just because of your expertise, but because you've lived it. You understand the pain and you've turned it into purpose. I stared at that email for hours, torn. Part of me wanted to shut that chapter for good, to lock it away in the past. But the braver part of me knew this wasn't an end. It was a beginning. I said yes. In my first week as director, I barely slept. Together with Solstice and Alex, we began laying the foundation for the program. A hotline was launched. A website went live within 10 days. And within a week, over 300 people had reached out, mostly middle-aged women, elderly individuals, or people who had been betrayed by someone they trusted. One of the first calls that shook me came from a 67-year-old woman named Marlene. "I borrowed my entire retirement fund to help my son start a business," she said over the phone. "Now he's gone. No money, no home, and I feel stupid." I sat in my office clutching the phone, my voice catching. No one is stupid for trusting someone they love, but having the courage to rise after betrayal, that's extraordinary. At the same time, I decided to do something I had been avoiding for months, cleaning out my parents' old apartment. After their assets were seized for restitution, the remainder had been turned over to local authorities. They gave me the right to retrieve any personal items unrelated to the case. Walking into the house I grew up in, it felt like time had frozen. The wooden clock my mother used to polish weekly was still there. The family photos on the walls, their fake smiles, now gave me chills. I stepped into my old bedroom and searched through Madison's dresser drawers, only to find a worn leather notebook, brittle with age. On the first page, in her handwriting, were the words, "Riverpine Plan, don't let Emma find out." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, not in anger, but to let go. That evening, I held the first support group meeting in a small hall, sponsored by the firm. I had prepared a speech, but as I looked around at the weathered faces in the room, faces that had once known fear, confusion, and now showed hope, I folded the paper in front of me. "I'm not here to tell anyone how to heal," I said slowly. "I'm here because I once sat exactly where you are now. I once believed that family was the safest place, until they crossed every line I thought couldn't be crossed." The room went still. Then a young woman named Lindsay stood up, tears falling. "Thank you for saying what I never dared to admit." After that meeting, I received dozens of messages, handwritten notes, even small gifts. Not out of gratitude, but because they no longer felt alone. I no longer had a mother, a father, or a sister in the true sense of the word. But I had found a new kind of family, one that didn't demand perfection, only honesty and compassion. One autumn afternoon, I sat on a bench near the office, watching sunlight filter through the leaves. Solstice arrived holding 2 cups of coffee. "Emma, do you think you'll ever forgive them?" she asked gently. I thought for a moment, then smiled. I don't know if forgiveness even matters anymore, but I know this. I've forgiven myself for staying silent, for enduring it, for believing that if I were just good enough, they wouldn't do what they did. Solstice nodded. "And now?" she asked. I looked toward the skyline, where so many people were trying to rebuild their lives. "Now I use my voice to protect the ones who never had a chance. That's how I begin again. That's how I choose to go on." That evening, I stood alone in the auditorium where Reclaim and Rise held its first conference. The room was empty, the chairs stacked, warm golden lights glowing on the stage where I had just shared my story with hundreds of others, people who had also been betrayed by family. On a small table in the corner sat dozens of handwritten notes, messages left behind by attendees. One of them read, "I used to think I was weak for not being able to forgive, but thanks to you, I see now. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is cut off what's toxic." I held the note, feeling the shaky words as if they were part of me. For years, I had fooled myself into believing that love meant enduring, that preserving the image of family was sacred. But now I understand, real strength doesn't lie in quietly absorbing pain. It lies in speaking up, in protecting ourselves and others from the cycle of abuse and lies. I used to be the daughter who tried to please everyone, who thought that if I worked harder, was kinder, more successful, my family would truly love me. But the truth is, love is not something you earn by trying harder. It's given freely, with respect and presence. And if it doesn't come with those things, it's not love, it's possession. I remembered the day I stood in court, testifying in front of the 3 people I once thought were my anchors. In that moment, it wasn't just pain in my heart. It was a quiet resolve: never let anyone else go through this without someone in their corner. Since then, I've met hundreds of people: a single mother betrayed by her own brother, who took out a loan in her name and disappeared, an elderly man living on disability, whose daughter used his name to buy a luxury car, a young college student burdened with debt after his parents used his identity to apply for a loan for his younger sibling's tuition. Different stories, same heartbreak, the betrayal of someone you once loved without question. And I began to realize, sometimes we have to redefine the word family. Family isn't blood. It's not about shared names or shared roofs. Family is where you're safe from exploitation, where trust is honored, not abused, where you don't have to prove your worth to be loved. I looked up at the banner hanging behind the stage, the program's motto in bold white letters: "Justice begins with truth." Alex stepped in through the side door, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. He handed me one and sat down in the chair beside me. "You did great today," he said. "Not just for what you shared, but for how you made people feel like they're not alone anymore." I smiled. I just don't want anyone going through this to feel weak or wrong for choosing to walk away from their old family. Alex hesitated. "Do you ever think about forgiving them?" I looked out the window, where the sunset was slowly fading. "I don't hold on to hatred," I replied. "But forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. Forgiveness is for peace of mind, not a second chance for them." Alex nodded. "I get that." With calm eyes, I turned to face him. "I've stopped looking for affection from those who have wronged me. I am constructing a new type of family, one composed of kind, respectful, and attentive individuals. Individuals like you, Solstice, and all those who took the stage tonight to share their stories." I lifted my tea to bravery, truth, and a fresh take on what family means. "The new beginnings we choose," Alex said, clinking his cup against mine. And I realized my life was no longer bound by the past as nightfall softly descended outside. Despite losing a family, I discovered who I was. From there, I started rewriting the definition of family by hand. Emma's tale serves as a potent reminder that love and safety aren't necessarily associated with family. Those closest to us can occasionally cause the most severe injuries. However, Emma demonstrated that real power comes from speaking up, choosing the truth, and defending herself and others from attack rather than remaining silent to maintain a false image. She helped others emerge from the shadows by transforming her suffering into a purpose in addition to regaining her dignity.